Our team has actually produced a potential vaccine for cancer since the year 2019. 2019 until now, 2026, 7 years later, we have not managed to secure any funding to do human trials for that vaccine. And our research continues to show that vaccine actually has the potential to provide safety and a cure possibly for many, many different types of cancers. It has been tested in mice, in animal trials for nasopharyngeal cancer and even for lung cancer. So imagine for cancers as diverse as our throat, our nose, our esophageal area, all the way to lung, we have shown in mouse animal models that we are able to provide vaccination against that cancer and help to cure and secure the survival of mice in those trials. Unfortunately, because there are different priorities in international spending, money is preferred to be spent on missiles to kill each other, stupidly enough. We can't secure funding for our vaccines in human trials. And there are people with lung cancer, throat cancer who are waiting for the cure. And 7 years later, we still cannot get the money together for human trials. You imagine how sad and unjustified the world can be with the way we spend money on the wrong things globally.
The first question is that just now you mentioned that CRM discovered a vaccine way back in 2019 and couldn't get funds. How much fund is required to fund the clinical trial?
Okay, clinical trial cost actually depends on three things. The first thing is the number of patients that you have. And very often the number of patients is determined by the minimum that will be passing regulatory requirements. At the very minimum, typically for this type of human trials for cancer type of vaccine is at least 40 patients. So 40 patients, the second component that determines the cost is of course what is the type of chemicals, what the type of medication required for the trial. If you have more expensive and more unique type of medication, for example immunotherapy drugs, these immunotherapy drugs are very, very expensive. And so aside from the actual number of patients, the type of drugs, the third component cost is the location. If you do trials that are in lower cost venue, possibly like in Asia, in Malaysia, it's a little bit lower cost. But sometimes when you do trials even in countries like Europe, in England, because certain medications are funded by the government as what we call standard of care, that means the government will pay for it, is recognized as a standard product already. And doing trials in those countries, although England is a very expensive country, but if the trial medication is funded by government as standard of care, it can also bring down the cost of trials. So these three are the main factors: number of patients, the type of medication for the trials, and last but not least, the location. For us at the moment, the entry level, so human trials have got three levels. The first level is called safety test, and that one normally, as I mentioned earlier, is about 40 patients and above. After the safety test, we make sure that nobody died from the trial medication, nobody died from the procedure, the process, and all that. Then you would get the data peer reviewed, and once it's approved, you do what they call the efficacy trial. Efficacy trial means that how safe, what percentage after safety is going to be impacted by recovery. So if you got, let's say, 1,000 patients in an efficacy trial, you say that 960 people survive, 40 people died for other reasons, then you know that the efficacy is 96% as an example. And then the last human trial stage is called double blind. Double blind meaning that for the regulator to approve, they must make sure you didn't cheat in your human trial data. So they will do a trial where half the patients or the subjects are actually given something called placebo. Placebo means that it's not the real drug. And then the other half are given real drugs. But you don't know, even as the investigator or the researcher, you don't know which 50% has the placebo, which 50% has the real vaccine drug. And the idea is that the auditor, maybe somebody like Pricewaterhouse or some other international auditor, will be able to determine that the patients receiving the real drugs should be the ones surviving compared to the group of patients, the 50% that didn't receive drugs, they received placebo. So these three-stage trials are very critical to all vaccine trials. Firstly is safety, next is efficacy, and lastly is the double blind. our safety trial for even 40 patients spread to England and here, because England, the certification is very global one. If you get UK approvals for vaccine, it is actually very easy to get most other countries. Malaysia is a little bit more challenging because we are not so well known for vaccine and medication pharmaceutical development. So we do a trial in UK and split some of it in Malaysia. Then it's about 30 million ringgit for the stage 1 for safety. Yeah.
So I understand that it's for Malaysia, zero fund for the vaccine. There's no fund for the vaccine.
At the moment, we have applied a couple of times through our various ministries and haven't been able to secure funding. Although I think 2 years ago we went through and we were approved for the technical validation. So the way that our government gives out funds is based on technical validity or technical approval on the process and the medication and the whole trial protocols, they call it. After they pass the technical, that means medically it's the right thing to do, research-wise the right thing to do, then they will review your financial. Make sure, for example, that you're really spending money on the medication, the patients are getting the money, you're not using the money to buy something silly like buy a car for yourself or buy an aeroplane, to fly around. So once they've done with the technical trial, technical review, they'll do the financial review, and then when the financial review is approved, then the ministry hands out the money. Unfortunately, although we have passed both technical and financial reviews 2 years ago, we still haven't received any funding until now. Yeah, it's been quite challenging. But you know why? Because the whole world economically and on a global level is kind of very difficult right now for any type of funding. So it's not really anyone's fault. The reality is that money is hard to come by.
Can also like Yayasan, Sam Dabi or Yayasan Petronas, or perhaps some entrepreneurs, philanthropists assist in the funding?
Yes, you can go and apply. We have been pitching. It's not that easy because there are two parts to it. Number one is somebody who wants at the commercial level who wants to give you funding, you got to consider the first thing is this: are they giving it to you as a pure donation? So if they give it to you as a pure donation, means that they don't expect anything and they give it to you totally off the bat, no strings attached. They don't expect anything back. In that case, it is quite challenging because the amount is a lot, and we already get a few million from Petronas and Sime Darby every year for our operational funding, and they have supported us since the year 2000. So Yayasan Petronas, Yayasan Sime Darby have been fabulous. Pon Nelly in Yayasan Petronas and Dr. Yatala, CEO of Yayasan Sime Darby, have been very supportive from day one to the year 2000 when we started, and every year they fund us to the tune of millions. It's difficult for them to come up with incremental funding at this stage also because they got many other projects that are very well deserving also for education for low income communities. The second thing is that if you go for this type of corporate or commercial funding, aside from outright donation, sometimes organizations or funders will insist on an investment mode. Investment meaning they want a share of your equity or they want a share of intellectual property. We are very careful with that because we want this to remain a Malaysian-owned research outcome, so that if we really do develop a commercially viable vaccine, it is done by Malaysians for Malaysians, for the rest of the world, but by Malaysians. And the concern is that very often when people ask us for equity funding or for, they call it as a startup funding, the issue is that they want some level of ROI in terms of your ownership of intellectual property. We're very careful about that because we really want this to be bought in Malaysia. So we are very challenged in the sense that there are some parties asking from overseas, but we're not very keen to allow them to take I would say an equity position or a financial position where they can control the outcome of the vaccine. We really want this to be independent and remain Malaysian.
Besides Sime Darby and Petronas, are there any Yayasans or any entrepreneurs who also can contribute to CRM on the operation costs?
Yeah, actually we use because the word the acronym CRM is quite common. It's also Clinical Research Malaysia. We use CRMY MY for Malaysia Yeah, quite a few other charities give on a regular basis. Some of them give in a very confidential manner. So they actually sign non-disclosure with us that we cannot mention. We get 2 or 3 other charities that give us literally a couple of million every year lah. A lot of the funding, it goes in 3 areas. Number one is that they are funding the pure research in itself. That means they can pay for projects in terms of the project cost, in terms of the chemicals, in terms of the equipment for the project lah. The second type of funding that they provide is sometimes human funding. So they fund the human capital. They fund our PhDs. We have about 20 plus people who are already PhD or going through the PhD program today. We have another 20 who are doing masters, and the other 40 plus researchers are all bachelors, some freshly graduate, but some of them are already planning to do their masters and PhD lah. So these all these 80 plus, almost 90 researchers actually require a lot of human capital costs every single month. And then the third cost, of course, your normal operational costs. Operational costs meaning people like myself to run the organization, our marketing communications company, our events company, and all employees who run events like the fun run today. Those all require costs also. So for many of those, we actually fund our operational costs from charitable activities like that. Most of the major funders will fund projects. Most of the major funders will tend to fund human capital for the scientists. But for the other things, operational level, like even simple things like electricity and all that, we got to do fundraising like this. Or else we got to turn off the lights. Unfortunately, yeah.
Does CRMY has any challenges to attract talents?
Yes and no. Okay, yes, in the sense that very often when people reach the level of expertise and experience that we want, usually it's because they are studied overseas for their bachelor's, master's, and PhD. Now, if you are familiar, to go through that program of bachelor's, master's, and PhD may be anywhere from 10 to 12 to 15 years. And very often their PhD or their masters come from overseas, which means that they have stayed in overseas university for nearly 12 to 15 years in England, in the US, maybe Japan, maybe Australia. And most people already settled down by that time, you know. So the challenge in talent is more so getting people to come back to Malaysia. On the other hand, the reason I said yes and no, it's not so hard in the sense that when people do want to come back, there's not many options for them to do pure research in Malaysia. Now, if you don't come to Cancer Research Malaysia, you can go to universities. But the challenge with universities is 2 things. Number one is most universities require the faculty to teach, not just to do project. Very few universities do pure research one. And secondly is that university research tends to be dependent on which funding they're getting. So they may do research on cancer this year. Another 2 years time they may do research on Alzheimer's. 2 years time they may do research on diabetes or do research on stroke and heart disease or whatever lah. So university research sometimes has the tendency to move and change topic depending on the funding that they get from their corporate or their grant sponsors. In our case, we are very consistent. For 26 years, we have done cancer, and our focus primarily has been Asian cancers, mostly nasopharyngeal and breast cancer. And at the moment, we're expanding progressively to other major cancers like lung, prostate, pancreatic cancer, and all that depending on whether we get funding But the nice thing for us is that we are very consistent. So the researchers who really want to come back and dedicate their lives to cancer research actually don't have very many options. They come to Cancer Research Malaysia because they know we are consistent in the type of research we do, and that we are not influenced by external funders. Because the research direction is what we dictate, and then we pitch to funders that we are doing this research, would you like to fund us? It's not that, you're giving us money, what do you want us to do? We try to avoid doing that type of research.
So that's CRMY.
Yes, CRMY.
Collaborates with other researchers abroad.
Yes. In fact, if you go to our website, the majority of our research is done in collaboration because of 2 simple reasons. Number one is that 90% of research funding actually is overseas. In Asia, we spend a lot less than Western countries in pure research, especially cancer. So as an example, my understanding from our scientists is that US, the NIH, National Institutes of Health, at one time, I don't know what it is today, but one time before COVID, before the current government in the US, they had as much as 50 billion US dollars in annual funding, 50 billion, for cancer research only, not other type of research, cancer research only. So we have to collaborate because they get a lot of money. Secondly is that most research is not, although it's done with an Asian cohort, it's not done purely for Asians. I mean, cancer goes everywhere lah. Every GNA, every genome will have cancer risks, and so very often when they do the research project, it must have a Caucasian component, it must have an Asian component, and typically that's where the collaboration comes in, to see whether there's a difference between Asian versus Caucasian versus European DNA lah. Whether the Americas got any difference with European, whether got difference with African, whether got any difference with Asian, and normally in such international projects, we are the Asian component lah.
Okay, last question is any final words from
Yeah, I think my final word is this: very often many Malaysians don't realize that we have this organization in Malaysia that we should really be proud of, we should support. Because we have been here for 26 years, we are all Malaysians, right? These people are all young people in Malaysia who came back because they're either committed to the country, they have their families here, their parents here. They want to be in the place where they were born and they grew up, even though they went overseas to study for, as I said, 12 to 15 years. They got very well qualified in their PhD, in their masters. But bottom line, they want to come back to Malaysia. And if we don't develop our own local talent to enable our Malaysian community to grow these talents, we'll be losing them to the international brain drain, and the loss will be ours because our community here will end up that we have fewer and fewer of these research talents, which are on a global basis. Earlier the question you asked, on a global basis, very hard to find, because research is a unique area where you actually don't make a lot of money as an individual unless you discover some major drug that is commercialized, right? And if the drug is in your name and you get royalties, you make money. If not for that, you do research compared to working in pharmaceutical, compared to working in hospitals, you make a lot more money there, you see. So pure research for the sake of research is not a very lucrative job lah. It's a passion lah. And if we don't attract the passion back in Malaysia, I think it's our loss as a country lah. Okay, I hope that sharing actually enables and gives the incentive to more people to support our young researchers in Malaysia. They are all Malaysians. There is one visiting researcher from Canada because his wife is Malaysian, but he's Canadian with a lot of experience in Canada, and he's visiting us on an annual basis to do research with us. If not, my 120 other people here are all Malaysians. We are not comprised of international researchers. We are really Buatan Malaysia homegrown.